Trump and Putin skip Ukraine peace talks in Turkey. So basically what's been happening was, I'm going to give you a TLDR, okay, that there has been this coalition of the eager, coalition of the willing, 5 leaders from European countries meeting in Kyiv. They've been discussing the war, they've been discussing what to do, and Ukraine has sort of demanded a ceasefire, and Putin in turn has said, let's not have a ceasefire, let's talk directly in Turkey. And the European countries have issued an ultimatum, a super important ultimatum. And that ultimatum was, we demand that you agree to a ceasefire before these direct talks even happen, okay? We are pressuring, they talked to Trump, they supposedly pressured Trump to pressure together with them Russia to agree to a ceasefire before the direct talks between Ukraine and Russia in Turkey. And then Trump seemingly changed his mind and told Ukraine, no, just forget about a ceasefire. Let's just jump into the negotiations directly. Like, this is a great opportunity for peace, and you have to take it. You have to do those direct talks. You have to. Which stunned the European leaders because they still don't know what kind of man Donald Trump is, and their credibility and believability was completely shattered. In fact, to save face, the European leaders have said, oh, the deadline for the ceasefire is up. Well, the deadline has been extended, okay? We're really gonna get serious now. If you don't agree to the ceasefire, we're gonna so super sanction you if you don't gonna do it. So you've got now a new deadline, and if you're not gonna meet it, then we're totally gonna do something about it this time. So that's the situation. In the meantime, Ukraine has told to Vladimir Putin, okay, we can have those talks. You have to come in person. You have to talk to Zelensky in person in Turkey. Then maybe we can talk. And also, while that was happening, Trump has very sort of has mentioned, hey, maybe I'll drop in for these talks. Who knows? I'm busy with stuff. So, maybe I will jump in. Maybe I'll drop in. Maybe I'm not gonna drop in. And the final result is the headline: Trump and Putin to skip Ukraine peace talks in Turkey. No show. So, whoopsie daisy, I guess. And of course, a dummy team is sent. US President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin indicated they would not attend what could be the first direct peace talks between Moscow and Kyiv in 3 years on Thursday, with the Kremlin sending instead a group of experienced technocrats, so a team of dummies. And I think Trump is planning to send Witkov and Kellogg, so nothing's gonna come out of it. I believe this is another stalling tactic by Russia. Russia does not want peace. People should come to terms with that. Europe should grow some spine and actually try to pressure Russia, because God knows the United States is never gonna do it unless Europe grows some balls and does something more drastic than saying, we're extending your deadline, this time we're really gonna do something if you don't meet it. Like, all of this is gonna end really, really badly. Like, since the beginning of Trump's term, everything has been going Russia's way, and that should not be the case. What happened to the art of the deal? What happened to ending the war in 24 hours? What happened to ending the war before taking office? What happened to ending the war in half a year, 100 days? What happened to wanting the deaths to end? What happened to all that? Well, nothing, because Trump doesn't really care. Trump does not give a damn. As I've said before, the only thing that Trump really cares about is normalizing the relationship with Russia. Putin on Sunday proposed direct negotiations with Ukraine, and that is the most interesting thing. Putin was the person to propose those direct talks. but he refuses to attend them. He refuses to attend the talks that he proposed to begin with. This is the amount of seriousness that I guess he takes this, okay? That this is the extent of the seriousness that this whole peace talk is given to by Vladimir Putin, without any preconditions. Late on Wednesday, the Kremlin said the delegation would include presidential advisor Vladimir Medinsky and Deputy Defense Minister Alexander Fomin, but Putin's name was not on the list. After the Kremlin's delegation announcement, a US official said Trump, who is on a 3-nation tour of the Middle East, would not attend. The US leader had said earlier that he was considering the option to participate. But of course, he won't. Of course, this is not treated seriously. This is just an opportunity for Russia to buy more time and continue the war, continue terrorizing Ukrainian people, continue to push at the front line to gain more territory. While Putin had never confirmed he would attend in person, the absence of the Russian and US presidents lowers the expectations for a major breakthrough in the war that Russia started in February 2022. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky had challenged Putin to attend the talks if he is not afraid, in an apparent contest to show Trump who wants peace more, Ukraine or Russia. This is not a question at this point anymore. Everybody should understand at this point that Russia just simply does not want peace. It is in Russia's interest to continue this war from the standpoint of economy and from the standpoint of prestige and sort of keeping the regime going, really. Vladimir Putin has to present this as a Russian victory to his people. And also there's the fact that, the projections for Russian economy are that Russian economy will be in a bad spot, whether it stops the war or not. And many citizens are pro-war because of the big amount of payment being given to widows and family members of the deceased soldiers. And a lot of oligarchs are also pro-war because they further their different interests throughout this war. While the Kyiv leader was on his way to Turkey late on Wednesday, a Ukrainian official said he would take part in the talks only if Putin attended. In his nightly video address on Wednesday, Zelensky said that Ukraine would decide on its steps for peace talks in Turkey once there was clarity on Putin's participation. And this is the statement. The answers to all questions about this war, why it started, why it continues, all these answers are in Moscow, Zelensky said. How the war will end depends on the world. And the world does not seem to want to adopt a firm stance when it comes to ending this war. It just doesn't seem to me. The West is divided more than it was before. The United States basically doesn't care, basically is bailing, basically is removing itself from the whole equation. The European Union is not completely united on the issue, especially when you consider Hungary's and Slovakia's attempts to undermine aid, support, and sanctions against Russia. It's not a good situation. It's actually a really bad situation all around. I am unfortunately not very optimistic about what's happening. Trump wants the two sides to sign up to a 30-day ceasefire to pause Europe's biggest land war since World War II. And a Russian lawmaker said on Wednesday there could also be discussions about a huge prisoner of war exchange. Zelensky backs an immediate 30-day ceasefire, but Putin has said he first wants to start talks at which the details of such a ceasefire could be discussed. So that is it. There was one more interesting article. Right, let's go to the confusion in Istanbul as Putin sends B team. Because it is a B team, because Putin doesn't care about peace. If he cared about peace, he would have attended personally, but he doesn't, so he won't. Russian President Vladimir Putin sent a second-tier team of negotiators to halt peace talks with Ukraine in Turkey on Thursday. So it's worse. It's worse than just him not showing. He is sending a subpar team. That is, again, I will repeat it. I've said it once, I will repeat it again. This is the amount of seriousness that he has for peace. That is the, basically, how much Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin wants peace. Spurring Kyiv's challenge to go there in person to meet President Volodymyr Zelensky. Putin's no-show plunged prospects for the talks, which would be the first since the early weeks of the war, into confusion. Russia said they would take place in Istanbul in the second half of the day, but Turkey said no meeting was scheduled yet. Yeah, this is, all of this is going well. Putin will not show, Trump will not show, a B-tier team was sent. Yeah, this definitely is not just Russia stalling for time and to... Yeah, definitely not. US President Donald Trump on a tour of the Gulf told reporters there would be no movement on peace talks in the absence of a meeting between himself and Putin. Progress undermined? Whoa, no way. Who would have guessed? What progress? I'm going to be quite honest. What progress has been made? No progress has been made. Progress is just such a generous word. There's been a lot of talking, chest puffing, false promises, and Trump has not been able even to achieve a ceasefire. Trump has not even been able to achieve a partial ceasefire. I'm astounded. I'm astounded by the fact that anybody could be using the word progress. Nothing's going to happen until Putin and I get together, Trump told reporters aboard Air Force One before landing in Dubai. Is this already his new Qatar? Air Force One, the bribe plane? His comment seemed to further undermine the potential for diplomatic progress in Turkey. Then what's the point of even organizing this? Like, this is ridiculous. Trump dropped... Okay, this is the situation, and I feel like it's important to stress the ridiculousness of it. There was a meeting of 5 leaders of Europe in Kyiv, okay? They said, together with Trump, we will pressure Russia to agree to a ceasefire as a prerequisite for the Istanbul meeting, okay? It's going to be a prerequisite. We're going to pressure Russia together for once. There's going to be not just pressure put on Ukraine, but there's going to be pressure also on Russia. But then Trump decided not to play and decided, no, actually, forget ceasefire. Let's just go and meet up in person. This is going to be a great chance. But then, after having said that, Trump basically said now, oh, by the way, I'm not going to go there, and there's nothing's going to happen until Putin and I get together. So this whole thing was basically meaningless, and for no reason at all, Trump has broken rank from the European Union. Trump has decided to not pressure Russia at all. Once again, so all of this was for nothing. All of this, the only result from this whole ordeal is that the European Union has shown itself to be toothless once more. That's the only thing, that's the only tangible result that comes out of this, that the European Union came out of it looking extremely weak, especially after they've prolonged the deadline for the ceasefire, for Russia to agree to it. The warring sides have been wrestling for months over the logistics of ceasefires and peace talks while trying to show Trump they are serious about trying to end what he calls this stupid war. No, Russia has not been making any effort to show that it's serious. By what? By demanding the 4 oblasts adamantly, by making no concessions, by not willing to give even an inch. That's not trying to prove anything to Trump, actually. Hundreds of thousands have been killed and wounded on both sides in the deadliest conflict in Europe since World War II. Washington has threatened repeatedly to abandon its mediation efforts unless there is clear progress, which would be something that Russia would like. That is actually something that Russia is fighting towards, working towards. The corrective lineup. Zelensky arriving in Ankara described the Russian lineup of putting aides and deputy ministers as decorative. He said Ukraine would decide its next step after he had met Turkish President Tayyip Erdogan. We need to understand what kind of level the Russian delegation is and what mandate they have and whether they can make any decisions, he said. Russia said its team was in Istanbul and ready for a serious work, and accused Ukraine of trying to put on a show around the negotiations, which is ironic, to say the least, which is very funny coming from Russia. Asked if Putin would join talks at some future point, Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov said, "What kind of participation will be required further? At what level? It is too early to say now. The Russian delegation is ready, and it is waiting in Istanbul. Pressure from Trump." Okay, let's see if there's any pressure from Trump. There was confusion in Istanbul, where some 200 reporters were gathered near the Dolmabahçe's palace on the Bosphorus that the Russians had specified as the talks venue. Zelensky had goaded Putin earlier this week by questioning if he was brave enough to show up, the Kremlin says. Putin, who is also under threat or even tighter European sanctions to suffocate Russia's economy, does not respond to ultimatums. The warring sides last held face-to-face talks also in Istanbul in March 2022, only weeks after Putin sent his army into Ukraine. After leaning heavily on Ukraine and clashing with Zelensky at an Oval Office meeting in February, Trump has shown increasing impatience with Putin in recent weeks and threatened additional sanctions to hit Russian trade. And yet, he has done nothing. The most that he has done is to say, "Vladimir, stop," or something like that, after cities have been bombed and children have been killed. So, yeah, that's some pressure. The reality of the situation is that there is absolutely no pressure, significant pressure on Russia from the United States. The US president said on Thursday he would go to the talks in Turkey on Friday if it was appropriate. "I just hope Russia and Ukraine are able to do something. It has to stop," he said. Pathetic. It's just pathetic. I would argue that ever since Donald Trump has taken office, everything has gotten far, far worse when it comes to this war. Far, far worse. And I would put a lot of the blame for it on on Trump. If the talks go ahead, they will have to address a chasm between the two sides over a host of issues. The Russian delegation is headed by presidential advisor Vladimir Medinsky, a former culture minister who has overseen the rewriting of history textbooks to reflect Moscow's narrative on the war. It includes a deputy defense minister, a deputy foreign minister, and the head of military intelligence. Key members of the team, including Medinsky, were also involved in the 2022 talks, an indication that Moscow wants to pick up where those left off. But the terms under discussion then, while Ukraine was still reeling from the initial Russian invasion, would be deeply disadvantageous to Kyiv. They included a Russian demand for deep cuts to the size of Ukraine's military. Oh yeah, Russia still wants Ukraine to demilitarize, of course, and wants to seize 4 oblasts apart from Crimea. With Russian forces now in control of close to a fifth of Ukraine, Putin has held fast to his long-standing demands for Kyiv to cede territory, abandon its NATO membership ambitions, and become a neutral country. Ukraine rejects those terms as tantamount to capitulation, because that is tantamount to capitulation, and is seeking guarantees of its future security from world powers, especially the United States, which it's not getting, because Trump once again primarily seeks to have good relations with Russia, so he won't guarantee any strong support for Ukraine. Empty chair. Zelensky backs an immediate ceasefire, but Putin has said he first wants to start talks at which the details of such a truce would be discussed. And then he decided not to go. Putin wants to talk, but Putin also does not want to do it in person. French Foreign Minister Jean-Noël Barrot said Zelensky had shown his good faith by coming to Turkey, but there was an empty chair where Putin should be sitting. Putin is stalling and clearly has no desire to enter these peace negotiations, even when President Trump expressed his availability and his desire to facilitate these negotiations, he said. So, there you have it. There you have it. No ceasefire. The peace talks are a joke. In the meantime, Russia is bombing Ukraine more than ever. More civilians are dying. The situation at the front line is more difficult than ever. It's more children are being kidnapped than ever. Oh yeah, let's not forget about the kidnapping of the children.